So why did I close my bakery after 20 years? A few weeks ago, I locked the doors to my bakery for the very last time. After 20 years, that was a very surreal moment. Because for most of those 20 years, I honestly thought I'd be doing this for the rest of my life. Then we announced we were closing. And almost immediately, everyone started asking me the same two questions. Why are you closing? And what's next? I've answered those questions dozens of times over the last few months, and today I want to share that story. The truth is, I wish there was one simple reason. I wish I could tell you that there was one big event that made the decision for me, that something happened and suddenly everything changed. But that's not what happened. Looking back now, I think it all started with one question that I couldn't stop asking myself. We'll get to that question in a few minutes because honestly, I think it changed the direction of my life. But to understand why that question mattered so much, I think you first need to understand what Susie's meant to me. For those of you who are new here or have likely never heard of my business before, my name is TJ Peach. More than 20 years ago, I started a bakery called Susie's Shortbreads. The business actually started with my mother's shortbread cookie recipe. That's where the name came from. At the time, I was just trying to build something of my own. Like most small business owners, I didn't have some grand 20-year plan. I was focused on getting through the first year, then the second, then the next holiday, the next lease renewal. 1 year somehow turned into 20. Along the way, that little bakery became a market stall, Canada's first cupcake truck, 3 retail store locations, and a business that became part of thousands of birthdays, weddings, and celebrations. We watched customers grow up. Some first came in as little kids holding their parents' hands. Years later, they were bringing in their own children. When you stop and think about it, that's pretty incredible. For a long time, I thought I'd do this forever. Not because I had some lifelong dream of owning a bakery until I retired. It just became my life. When people asked what I did, I owned a bakery. When people thought about me, they thought about Susie's. It became part of my identity in a way I don't think I fully appreciated until much later. Now here's where I think a lot of people misunderstand what happened. Whenever a business closes, people naturally assume that something must have gone wrong. Maybe there were financial problems. Maybe the owner didn't have a choice. And while every business certainly has difficult seasons, that really wasn't our story. In fact, that's what made the decision so much harder. We still had customers. People still wanted our cupcakes and cookies. They still wanted us to keep going. In fact, I continue to receive messages to this day with customer requests and people missing us. The business had actually given me more than I ever imagined it would. It helped me build a life I'm incredibly grateful for. It paid off my mortgage. It paid off my vehicle. It funded retirement savings. It allowed our family to travel in ways that I never thought we'd be able to. More importantly than any of that, it introduced me to people I'll never forget. Employees who became friends, customers who became part of our story, appearances on television, print, and digital media, and memories that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. I don't regret building Susie's, not for a second. If anything, I'm proud of what we created, which is exactly why deciding to walk away was so difficult. Because this wasn't about escaping something I hated. It was about asking myself whether I wanted the next chapter of my life to look exactly like the last one. And for a long time, I honestly didn't know the answer. If you've never owned a small business, it's hard to explain what it's actually like. People see the finished product. They walk into the bakery, see a display case full of cupcakes and cookies, and that's the business they experience. But the business side that owners experience looks very different. Long before the doors open, there's ovens running, mixers going, deliveries arriving, orders to organize, staff calling in sick, equipment deciding to break at the worst possible time. And somehow, no matter what happened, customers still walk through the door expecting everything to be perfect. And usually it was. And this isn't a complaint. It's just the responsibility that comes with being the owner. And I accepted that responsibility for 20 years. There were certainly stressful days. There were long days, days where I questioned what I was even doing. But there were also incredible days. Watching a new employee gain confidence, seeing a kid's face light up when they picked out a birthday cupcake, reading messages from customers telling us that we'd become part of their family traditions. Those moments made all the difficult days worthwhile. That's why this decision wasn't about escaping hard work. I've never been afraid of hard work. If anything, I probably enjoy working a little too much. The problem wasn't the work. The problem was that somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself whether I was still building a life that I wanted, or was I just maintaining it? I think a lot of business owners know exactly what I'm talking about. In the beginning, everything feels exciting. Every year you're creating something, trying new ideas, taking risks, growing. Then one day, without really even noticing, your job changes. You're not building anymore. You're maintaining. You're protecting what you've already built. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's probably what every successful business eventually becomes. But I slowly realized that I missed creating. I missed learning and building something new. At first, I ignored that feeling. I told myself it was just a phase. Maybe I was just tired after another busy season. Maybe I needed another vacation. Love those. Then our lease came up for renewal. Again. And like every other lease renewal before it, the expectation was simple. Renew the lease, keep going. That's what I'd always done. It's what everyone expected me to do. Honestly, it's what I expected me to do. But this time, something felt different. Instead of automatically thinking about the next 5 years of the business, I started thinking about what the next 5 years of my life would be like. And one afternoon, I found myself asking a question that I hadn't really allowed myself to ask before. If nothing changed, would I actually be happy if my life looked exactly like this 5 years from now? I wish I could tell you that I immediately knew the answer, but I didn't. That question followed me everywhere. I'd be driving home and it would pop into my head. I'd be standing in the bakery and I'd think about it again. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about it. Not because I was trying to leave, but because I couldn't ignore the question anymore. And what made it so difficult was that there wasn't anything obviously wrong. The bakery was still doing what it had always done. Customers were still coming in. We had an incredible team. Life looked good from the outside, which almost made me feel guilty for even asking the question. Because how do you explain to people that you're considering walking away from something that's been so good to you? I wrestled with that for a long time. Then one day I realized something that in hindsight seems so obvious. I'd been asking the wrong question. The question wasn't, can I keep doing this? Of course I could. I'd been doing it for 20 years. The real question was, do I want to? And those are two completely different questions. That realization honestly scared me, because once I admitted that to myself, I couldn't pretend that I hadn't. Once I admitted the answer to myself, everything else became harder, because deciding something in your own mind is one thing. Actually telling people is something completely different. I vividly remember breaking the news to our employees. That was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. Not because I wasn't confident in the decision, but because I knew how much this place meant to all of us. For some people, it was just a bakery. For us, it had been our lives. Then came telling our customers. I knew people were going to be disappointed. But what I wasn't prepared for were the stories. People started sharing memories that I'd completely forgotten, or memories I didn't even know existed or that we were even a part of. They told me about birthdays, weddings, picking up cupcakes after dance recitals, stopping in every Saturday with their kids, parents telling me that we made gender reveal cakes for their child who is now graduating from high school. The list goes on. Reading those messages was emotional, and some most certainly brought me to tears. I'm still doing it right now. Not because they made me question the decision, but because they reminded me that what we'd built had mattered. When you're busy running a business every day, you're so focused on getting through the next order, the next holiday, the next busy weekend, you don't always stop to see the impact that you're having. Closing the bakery forced me to stop, and for that I'll always be grateful. Looking back now, I think I learned something that I wish more business owners talked about. It's okay to leave something before you hate it. I think too many of us wait until we're completely burned out. We convince ourselves that we have to just keep going until we're exhausted, until we're angry, until we resent the very thing that we once loved. I didn't want that. I loved what we built. I still do. I wanted to leave while I could still smile when I looked back, while the memories were still good memories, while I could honestly say I'm proud of what we created. That mattered to me a lot. Because I never wanted the last chapter of Susie's to erase the many chapters that came before. Basically, I wanted the story to end while I still loved the story. And maybe that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned through all of this. Just because you've invested years into something doesn't automatically mean that you're supposed to spend the rest of your life doing it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't holding on. It's letting go. Sometimes it's recognizing that you've already accomplished what you set out to accomplish. When I first opened the bakery, I wasn't trying to build something that I'd own forever. I was trying to build a business that gave me a good life. Looking back now, it did exactly that. It gave me a career I was proud of. It gave me experiences I'll never forget. It gave me opportunities I never imagined. It challenged me. It humbled me. It taught me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. In a lot of ways, the bakery had already fulfilled its purpose. Which brings us back to the question everyone keeps asking me. Why did I close my bakery after 20 years if everything was still going wonderfully? The simple answer is this. Because it was time. Not because the business failed. Not because I failed. Not because something catastrophic happened. It was just simply time for a new chapter. That doesn't mean that this decision was easy. It just means that eventually it became the right one. And once I accepted that, I found something that I honestly hadn't felt in a very long time. Excitement. Not excitement about closing, excitement about what could come next. So on to the next question. What is next? And honestly, I'm not completely sure. And for the first time in a very long time, I'm okay with not having every answer, not having a perfectly mapped out 5-year plan. And for those who know me, being the planner that I am, that is quite shocking. One of the greatest gifts this business gave me wasn't just a career. It has given me the freedom to slow down long enough to be intentional about what comes next. For 20 years, every decision was about the bakery. The next holiday, the next schedule, the next production list, lease renewal, the next problem that needed solving. Now, for the first time in a very long time, I get to ask a completely different question. What do I actually want to build? Not what do I have to build, what do I want to build? And that's exciting. I know one thing for certain, I don't want the last 20 years to stay locked inside my own head. I've made a lot of mistakes. Some of them were expensive. Some of them completely changed the way I think about business. I also learned things that I don't think I could have learned in any other way. And that's what this channel is going to be about. Not recipes, not cake decorating. There's certainly enough channels out there already doing that. I'm not going to try to convince you that there's one perfect way to run a business. I simply want to share what 20 years actually looked like. The wins, the mistakes, the decisions I got right, the ones I wish that I made sooner, the things that worked, the things that absolutely didn't. Because if you're building a bakery, or really any small business, I think there's value in hearing from someone who's already been through it. Not because I have all the answers, I definitely don't, but because I have 20 years of experience that might help you make better decisions in your own journey. Beyond this YouTube channel, I have a few ideas of what I want the next chapter to become. One of the things I've realized over the last few months is that what I spent 20 years building isn't just a bakery. It's 20 years of experience and lessons. 20 years of systems, mistakes, ideas, and decisions that I think can genuinely help someone else who's earlier in their journey. So over the coming months, I'm going to be creating products such as business guides, templates, or worksheets that bakery owners, aspiring bakery owners, or even other just small business owners may find helpful. Resources that I wish I'd had when I was starting out. My first one is already in the works, so stay tuned for that launch. Another thing I know a lot of you have been waiting for is recipes. Ever since we announced that we were closing, I've had hundreds of people join our mailing list, hoping that we'd eventually share some of the recipes that made Susie's. I'm not planning to turn this into a recipe channel, but I do plan to release some of the recipes that we used in the bakery over the last 20 years as digital products for those who've been asking. I haven't decided on when that will be or which recipes that I plan to release just yet, but it is something that will happen when I'm ready. I also want to spend time working directly with bakery owners. Over the last 20 years, I've been fortunate enough to learn business from two very different classrooms. One was earning my MBA before ever starting my own business. The other was opening the doors to my bakery every morning for more than 20 years. One taught me the principles. The other taught me what it's actually like when payroll is due, equipment breaks, and customers are waiting at the counter. I think bringing those two perspectives together is something that can genuinely help other bakery owners build stronger businesses. And if I can help someone avoid even a few of the mistakes I made, or to create a business that gives them more freedom and less stress, that would be incredibly rewarding. So watch for opportunities to work with me on coaching calls or business consulting. And finally, the one I know many of you have been waiting for and contacting me about. Just because the retail bakery is gone doesn't mean the baking's gone completely. One of the decisions I made before closing was keeping some of the equipment and setting up a dedicated kitchen at home that I had used in the past when I first started Susie's over 20 years ago. So yes, there will be occasional bakery pop-ups for my local customers. The difference is that now I get to do them on my terms, not because the calendar or lease says that I have to, but because I genuinely want to. And I think that's going to make baking fun again. When you put all of that together, that's really what this next chapter is about. Taking everything I've learned over the last 20 years and sharing it in different ways. Sometimes that'll be through videos like this. Sometimes it'll be through guides, recipes, or coaching. And sometimes it'll simply be putting on an apron, turning on a mixer, and baking a few hundred cupcakes for a local pop-up sale. The difference is, now I get to choose. I get to bake because I want to. I get to teach because I enjoy it. I get to build something new because it genuinely excites me. And I think that's a pretty great place to start. If you've watched this entire video, thank you. And I want you to do one thing. Leave me a comment below and answer this question. If nothing changed, would you be happy if your life looked exactly the same 5 years from now? That's the question that changed everything for me. I'm genuinely curious how you would answer. And if conversations like this interest you, if you enjoy hearing the real stories behind building a business, not the Instagram version that all the so-called gurus try to sell you on, then make sure you subscribe. Because that's exactly what this channel is going to be. We're going to talk about business, freedom, mistakes, growth, starting over, and how to build something you're proud of without losing yourself in the process. I think we're going to have some really interesting conversations. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.